Rachel, it is such an honor to have you on today. I know we've DM'd a little bit, but this is the first time we're actually speaking, and I am so excited to get to know you a little bit better. So for those listening who have never met you, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, I'm Rachel Druckenmiller, and I am if I had to describe what I am and who I do, if I had to describe who I am and what I do, I am a catalyst who unleashes what's possible in people so that they come alive. And that is what I feel drawn to do. I do that as a keynote speaker, as a singer-songwriter, as someone who's working on my first book, that not out yet, but working on my first book. So that's what I do. I help people to come alive, to get unmuted, to show up with more courage and confidence, and to live a life and have a career that really lights them up.
Yeah. Oh, and I love that. And this is why we are speaking, because I am drawn to you. Everything you say, your songs on our playlists, by the way. So they really are cool. My kids listen to them. So it's really amazing what you do. Yeah. Yes. So I'm gonna tell them I spoke to you today.
Yes, this actually happened. Cool. Hey, you know what I've done? This is a side note. I've sent videos. People are like, my kids don't believe that I know you. And I'm like, why? And I have a friend, Mita Malik, who's very active on LinkedIn, shares a ton of awesome stuff. And I sent a video to her kids, addressing her kids by name. And I was like, your mom is very cool. And she does know me.
I know, isn't it? It must feel so surreal. But I mean, having a song is just so cool. So amazing. All right, let's begin the episode. As I always say, it's my favorite part, and it's often the guest's favorite part, because we don't often get to reminisce and look back at, who we were and where we've come from. So tell me about that first job you ever had. I say the first dollar you ever made.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because my parents are both entrepreneurs. So I had some random jobs. I did babysitting. The first time I ever got paid to do something, I was in middle school, and there was a company called Olympia Sales Club, and it was a catalog, and you would go door to door selling, garbage to people that they did not need, but they're not going to turn away like a 9-year-old girl. And you would make commission off of this, and you'd get a commission check for like $17 or whatever it was, which was a huge deal. Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of actual job, I worked at a produce market starting in high school when I was 15, because my parents were like, so what are you doing this summer? You're not sitting around here doing nothing. And I can pick out a cantaloupe and a watermelon really effectively now. So.
Well, that is good. Those are good skills. I cannot. I don't think I can do that. Even moving from South Africa to America, I still have to Google, like, what is an aubergine?
Eggplant, right? Yeah.
I love that. All right. So tell me, okay, so did you go at 9? This always baffles me. So, because I mean, I have a 10-year-old, and, he wants to start his own company. And I'm like, you're 10. Let's just be a kid for a second. But you were 9. Did you say door-to-door sales from a catalog? Like, that is next level. So you have to tell me. Like, just everyone was nice to you, or did you have some?
I mean, I'm sure some people rejected me, and it was like not stuff that probably anybody needed. Honestly, if I had to probably go back and ask my parents and ask them, what did people buy from me? They bought something enough for me to get, $17 worth of a commission check. But for me, it was, I think, tapping into that sense of agency and being industrious, which is a skill I think that's important to learn early in life. So I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Then grocery store, teenage years. Did you do anything else?
Well, late teens. I mean, I just worked at a produce market. It was a family-owned company. They were all farmers, so really strong work ethic. Get up early, long days. And it was really nice to work with a family that genuinely cared. It was the uncles and the cousins and the, kids and the parents that worked there. And I really loved it. It was my summer job. And I was a writing tutor in college, so I got paid to, help people write better. But that was basically it until, after graduation. So.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm glad I asked because I was just assuming like Safeway or something like that.
Oh.
So you actually worked for a family that cared. It was their thing. They were growing. It was their baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole nother approach to business. I'm sure you learned a lot there. Any hard days or any funny stories?
I mean, when you're 15, you don't want to get up at 7:00 in the morning, get driven by your parents to your job. This was my life. This is what I did. So prior to that experience, I had this strong aversion. This is so random. I had a really strong aversion to country music. Not interested at all. And this family is all they listen to. And so I have them to thank for my exposure, because now I do like country music. I have them to thank for the fact that they would incessantly play it in the store all the time. And just to see people work really hard, was really inspiring. There would be people that would say random things coming up and asking people would shake, just seeing how people would they'd like shake a watermelon or shake a cantaloupe. And then they'd be like, this is the one. I'm like, I'm not sure what you were listening for, but that's not how this works. So it was entertaining to watch people be experts in a thing that they clearly had no idea what they were doing and just kind of not saying anything.
I love that. This sounds like a really good watermelon.
Yeah. What did you hear when you shook it?
Tell me all your secrets. That's brilliant. Okay. Let me pull myself together. All right. But I like how you framed that actually, when you're like just watching people be these experts that they're clearly not. I'm sure we've all been there with something. You like tapping things, squeezing arrows. Oh, perfect. All right. So, and then you did college and you were a writing tutor, you said?
I was a writing tutor. I was a psychology major. So I studied psychology, and I also had an interest. I went to a liberal arts school. So we had to take courses in literature and in art and all different kinds of disciplines, which I think is really important to be exposed to, a wide range of those kind of things as opposed to specializing too soon. And I also was interested in nutrition and sociology. So I took a lot of sociology classes. I took some nutrition classes, even though I was a psych major. I sort of created my own major by the way I blended it. But the real catalyst for me in college was making the very brave choice to spend a semester abroad in southern Spain, fall of my junior year.
Okay. Tell me more about that. What made you decide to go, first of all?
Well, I had a college professor, Dr. Tom Devaney, who pulled me aside after Spanish class one day because we had to take a language at school. And he said, you have a knack for language. I really think you should consider studying abroad. Now, I'm born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, on the East Coast of the U.S. I had never been further west than West Virginia, like one state over. So the idea of going to live in another country whose language, I was a beginner Spanish student, whose language I barely spoke for 4 months, felt like something I was very not interested in doing. Mm-hmm. So initially, I sort of pushed it aside. And then I started telling adults, my mom or people I worked with, because at the time in college, I was an intern at basically an admin assistant intern at an employee benefits consulting firm in the insurance industry, where my dad had worked as a consultant, and they were like, they'll hire you to do things. Mm-hmm. So I was working there over my winter break. And I remember talking to one of my coworkers, Gail, and I said, my Spanish professor thinks I should study abroad. She said, oh, you should definitely do that. I talked to my mother, who at the time was in her early 50s. She had still never been outside of North America. And she said, I regret I had a chance to go to France for 2 or 3 weeks when I was in college, and I didn't go. And I wish I'd gone. Basically, every adult I talked to said, you get a chance to go live in Europe for a few months, you should probably go do that. But I didn't want to miss out. Sometimes we let fear drive a decision because we tell ourselves the story that, well, if I do this thing, I'm really going to be sacrificing this other thing. Mm-hmm. But some parties, really, on the weekend, that's what I'm sacrificing. What am I missing out on here, honestly? Mm-hmm. So I made the brave choice to go. And I chose Granada, a city in southern Spain that's, not as popular as Madrid or Seville or other places or Barcelona. And the trip totally changed my life. Mm-hmm. For the first time in my life, I was immersed in this culture of people who were vibrant and expressive and alive, and they danced and they sang and they laughed and they lived their life. And I was always so serious before then. I was a very studious person. I cared about my grades more than literally anything else. And it just let me loosen up a little bit. And I got to travel, and I was put over and over again in situations where I had to figure out how to communicate and how to navigate something I'd never navigated before. I was constantly in uncertainty, and it changed things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, so good. It's amazing how a decision that's literally just 4 months of your life, right? That's a blip, a little blip, but yet it can have such a huge impact. And I love that you said, what was I missing out on? Parties, and I can totally relate to that. I moved to London when I was 18, and I was also like, I'm going to miss out on all my friends. And, no, you think that's the biggest deal, but it's not at all. So I am so glad you were brave enough to do that. In another country, studying, in a different language that's, not your own, and you're still trying to fathom. I'm sure you're still like piecing sentences together and, not sure how to ask for the cantaloupe, although you can probably point to one. So that's good. All right. So those 4 months, and then you came back?
Yeah, I came back. And when I lived there, I think one of the things that's important for any of us to realize is that if we really want to experience a transformation inside of ourselves, one of the most effective ways to do that in any area of our lives is a complete immersion. So I didn't just go to Spain and live with a bunch of American students. I lived in a homestay with a woman named Matilde and her granddaughter, Alba. And Matilde did not speak a lick of English. So I had to figure it out. I mean, my dictionary was my best friend, and her granddaughter did speak, some English, but I got so much more out of that experience because I was fully immersed in it, as opposed to like dipping a toe in the, I'm kind of partially committing. I think we have a tendency to do that with things in our lives, and sometimes there's a place for that. But I'm really glad that I made the decision to fully immerse myself in the challenge of living with someone who didn't really speak my native language for 4 months in a country where I was a stranger. And it gave me such a sense of empathy when I came back, because if I'd run into somebody who I could tell was maybe Spanish speaking and they were trying to communicate something, they didn't know that I spoke it. And they would speak in broken English, and then I would say something in Spanish, their whole face would light up. Gosh, this person understands me. We all want to be understood. Mm-hmm. So I come back from that. I feel emboldened. We have this gospel choir on campus, and I was in it because you didn't have to audition. Because previously to that, my whole life, I loved singing, but I just wouldn't even do it in front of anybody because it was too risky. Like, what if I mess up? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What if I'm not good?
What if they laugh at me?
What if they laugh at me?
My mom says I'm good, but does that mean I'm good?
What if they whisper? I mean, this was, what's going to happen? This was peak American Idol days. My gosh, you can end up on a video you don't want to be on. So I come back from that trip and I feel emboldened, because when you do something brave in one area of your life, it tends to have a ripple effect in other areas of your life. It's a positive contagion. So I come back, I feel brave. They're doing auditions for the spring concert. It's a February night. And I wait till everyone leaves the chapel. And I went up to the director and I said, I want to audition for a solo, which is never a phrase I had said in my entire life. And I auditioned and I got it. And I got a solo every semester after that. And I started to come alive, and I started to reconnect to the joy of singing that had always been a private experience for me in a public way. I was still terrified. Mm-hmm. But I knew, I felt compelled, I felt convicted that I had to start letting this part of myself out and to be heard. And it's ultimately how I connected with when I was a senior, the sophomore at the time, robbing the cradle, who 20 years later as my husband. So through the power of, singing and connecting through music with people.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. I love that. And we're going to get back into that definitely a little bit later, because I just admire all of that part of you very much. I think so many of us have that hidden thing that we love, but we're scared, and the judgments and all of that. So yeah, I do want to dig into that. So from there, you're still studying, and what was your first, so you said you were working as an admin in an insurance company, and then, so what did your 20s look like into your 30s?
So when I got out of school, I knew I didn't want to be a therapist, like a clinician with a degree in psychology, but I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. Positive psychology, psychology looked really interesting to me because it was focused on how do we make things better, optimize. And I grew up with a dad who listened to Tony Robbins and watched a lot of Oprah. So that was sort of in my DNA to be interested in possibility-oriented people. Mm-hmm. I swore up and down that what I would not do was work in insurance. So it took me months to get this, but I got a research project with Johns Hopkins University working on a study around behavioral health changes for people with diabetes. And I got in this job and I was miserable almost right away because I was doing work that required no brain cells, and I felt like a peon and I wasn't challenged. And I was in that job working both jobs, the insurance job as an admin and this research job, back and forth, back and forth. And I got to the point where I was like, I can't do this. And I went back to the insurance company and I said, can you hire me to do something full time? And then shortly after that, within the year, I met a woman named Jessica Sheffield, who was the wellness manager at a gym. This was in 2007. Mm-hmm. And I discovered the field of corporate wellness, and it combined my interest in psychology, health and human behavior, mm-hmm. and all the workplace stuff I learned from my dad, who's a management consultant. Back to immersion. I started to immerse myself. I got my hands on anything I could, webinars, white papers, connected with people on LinkedIn when nobody was on LinkedIn, reaching out to them saying, I love the work that you're doing. Will you talk to me? I'm nobody with nothing to offer you. Will you have a conversation? And they were happy to, and they did. And I connected with some highly influential people very early on in my career because I was willing to take a shot and reach out to them and put myself out there, unmute myself, I suppose, early on. And I was what is called, this isn't talked about very often, I was an intrapreneur. So people hear a lot about entrepreneurship. You go out on your own, you do your thing. Entrepreneurship is you have the kind of drive, ambition, and creativity of an entrepreneur, but you have the safety net of a paycheck. Mm-hmm. So fortunately, my boss, Richard, gave me a tremendous amount of leeway and let me kind of make up my job, which is what I did for the vast majority of the time that I was there.
How long were you there?
13 years. Okay. The job I wasn't going to stay in. I was there.
The job you were not going to get. So that's why I was asked the question. The job you did not definitely want. And that's just, let's look back at your manager, right? Giving you that rope, letting you mold the role. I'm sure you were, I'm going to make some assumptions. I'm sure you were effective. You added value, all of the things, but you weren't boxed into this, this is your role. Here are the 7 bullet points you need to do. So tell me more about, and, whether it's that manager or maybe a mentorship or whatever that is, mm-hmm. but tell me about the people around you and how that made you stay in a job you definitely didn't want for 13 years.
That's a great way of framing it. Well, one, I had this modeled by my parents. My mother's a financial advisor. My dad's a management consultant. They both run their own businesses. So for me, it was normal to essentially make up what you did and get people to pay you for it. That's what I thought work was, because that's what my model was. Jessica, this wellness manager, was a mentor for me right off the bat. And I learned so much from her. And she was so generous in her willingness to share what she had learned with me. Mm-hmm. And I sort of got to shadow her in a lot of different experiences with clients of ours that we would mutually work with. And I, along the way, in the midst of all this, there was a point at which I almost lost my job. 2008, 2009, my CFO brings me into his office and he says, I had been tracking my hours under some other guys, other than what the real reason were why they were having me track my hours. And I sit in his office and he said, basically, there's not enough full-time wellness work for you to do here. You can either become an admin assistant or an account coordinator, or we will give you 3 months to find somewhere else to work. And I felt like I got punched in the gut. And I was so righteously indignant when I walked out of that office. I was so angry. My boss at the time was the executive assistant, and she was asking me to do things that were technically her job. Like, will you do the CEO's expense report? In my mind, I'm like, that's not my job. Which is, I've learned the fastest way to not have a job is to tell somebody that's above you, that's not my job. So I had to have a piece of humble pie talking to my dad one day. I said, can you believe, he's been my career coach for the vast majority of my life. And he said, I said, can you believe that she asked me to do this? I was looking for validation. Worse, Rachel, how ridiculous. And he said, honey, she's your boss. If she wants you to get her coffee every day, you get her coffee every day. At which point I hung up the phone on him. So in a Trader Joe's parking lot, how dare you speak truth to me at a time where I'm being very arrogant.
Yes. You're not supposed to tell me the truth. We all know that.
So, that was a catalyst. The conversation was a catalyst. And what it led me to do was to think to myself, and this is a question anyone can ask themselves in a moment when you're feeling stuck. How can I be a contribution today? Based on the skills, talents, experience, perspective, and expertise that I have, however limited that was at 24, 25 years old. How can I contribute? And so I started to look at my job. And even though my job was a wellness coordinator, I looked at any other gaps that existed within the organization where I had a skill or something that I could do well that could meet a need that perhaps in their eyes was a need they didn't even know existed. I was one of the youngest people in the office. I knew how to use PowerPoint really well, which might sound ridiculous now, but a lot of people weren't great at it. So I said, I'm going to redesign our slide decks for our prospect meetings and our client meetings. Nobody asked me to do that. I just decided I was going to because I saw what we had and I thought it was not good. I was a writing tutor in college. We had RFPs, requests for proposals, that were sometimes 20-some pages that went out to prospects. They were a real pain to go through and redline and check for edits and, errors. I said, I will edit all the RFPs. I found other ways. I thought Microsoft Office was a thing and no one in the office was really trained on it. I said, I'm going to learn enough about all these different aspects, Outlook, Excel, enough to train the trainer to teach people here how to do this stuff more effectively. Nobody asked me to do any of this. I'm not saying that as like, I'm so great that I did this. The point is, within any organization, there are things that need to be done. That because people aren't looking for ways to be a contribution and to be of value, because they're not thinking about, well, what are the skills that I have that could meet a need here, even if it's not in my official job description? Being wired that way really helped me. And so I started to add value to the company in ways that they did not expect. And that 3-month mark hit. And we never revisited the conversation. And 5 months after that first conversation, I said, am I good here? They're like, yeah, you're good. You're good. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. That's huge. That is huge. I mean, and that is 2008. That was a tough economic time,
Yeah.
Holding on to a job is a good thing at that moment. But I love that reframe. And I feel we are very similar because I also grew up, both of my parents had businesses. I mean, they were business partners. They had about 7 businesses in their lives. And I also have that. It's like, okay, what can I do? Where are the things? How can we make this better? So I really resonate deeply with that. And I do think that advice we need to just say again, because look where you can contribute. I love that. Yeah. So powerful. It sounds so simple, like ridiculously simple, but it can make all the difference. Absolutely. Okay. 13 years in, what happens next for you?
Well, I in my late 20s, there were a couple things that happened in my late 20s. We had been having some success with our wellness program. So I started running our internal programs and we started to get attention for it. I started applying for awards. Again, take initiative. If people take nothing else away from this conversation today, you have the ability to influence the path of your future more than anyone or anything else. And when you recognize that, when you really take a sense of ownership over that, when you activate a sense of agency inside of yourself and say, oh my goodness, I can be the creator of my reality of what happens next. It's so empowering. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I started applying for awards, top workplaces, healthy employer. We started winning awards. My boss started seeing me as a more strategic partner. This helped me elevate and advance myself. I go back to school. I get an advanced degree, master's degree in health science. I pursue a health coaching certification because I healed my body through things I did with what I was eating differently. All these things are happening. I apply for an award. The last day the application was due to be recognized as one of the top 100 health promotion professionals in the United States by a group called the Wellness Council of America. I make it to the top 100. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. This is wild. I make it to the top 10. No way. Stop. Get out of here. February of 2015, I get on a Skype call. Skype, funny, right? I get on a Skype call on a Tuesday afternoon, maybe.
That noise.
Yeah, that I know, but exactly. You don't need to say anymore. The bubbles. I get on this Skype call with the president of the company, and they said, we're talking to all the top 10 people, which sounded credible, but there was a little part of me that was like, I think there's something else here. I win the whole thing. I get recognized as the #1 health promotion professional in the United States. And I get put on the map at a national level in my industry in a way that I never had been before at 30 years old. I get recognized at their conference. They were just going to put me on stage and give me a plaque. Lesson I'm about to share is sometimes, one, you have to sometimes accept the invitation, which is what I did for Spain. Professor said, you should go. I accepted. I said, yes. Someone presents an opportunity that makes you feel curious, intrigued, alive, say yes. And then the other part is sometimes you have to throw your own party. What I mean by that is when they said, we're going to bring you on stage, fly you out to California, give you a plaque and recognize you. I said, can I give an acceptance speech? Now, I was not a speaker. This was not something that I did. I had spoken, guest lectured for a client of ours that was a professor at my alma mater in their HR master's class a couple of times. I had no speaking training. I was going to be in front of 400 of my peers. I'd been to this conference as an attendee 7 years at this point. And I saw the opportunity and I thought, this is something I need to take advantage of. I got to maximize this opportunity. They gave me 8 to 10 minutes. I went on stage. I gave an acceptance speech. I still have the video. I'm pacing. I'm so nervous and my voice is up here, like in the top of my head. And you can tell that I'm kind of uncomfortable. But I did it. And as I got off stage, the president, gives me a hug and says, that was really, that was phenomenal. We should have her speak at our conference next year. And in the last page of a purple journal on the flight home, I wrote, I will speak at Wacoa next year. 4 months later, I got a phone call. And they said, Rachel, we'd like you to speak at our conference next year as one of the keynotes. I'd never done a keynote before. I had no training as a keynote speaker. I had no training as a speaker at all. And I said yes. And that was the beginning, 10 years ago, was the beginning of being a keynote speaker.
Because you asked to do an acceptance speech. I love it. What a story. This is so good. Did you even have sights on being a speaker at that time? You just wanted the kind of recognition, the moments, you win a Emmy Award, you're allowed to do an acceptance speech. So did you have that in your sight? Was it a strategic move towards speaking?
At that point, I had been to a lot of conferences and I really loved watching people on stage. I was not a performer growing up. I was very shy, introvert. I had a book called The Introvert's Advantage. I was very guarded. I was very self-conscious. I was not a performer. I didn't grow up dreaming I'd be on a stage. But the more I went to these events, I could see the power that people had to impact and influence someone from a stage in a short amount of time. And there was something about that was very appealing. So it was the beginning. When I got off stage after I did that keynote, I was like, this like whatever that was needs to happen more in my life. Mm-hmm. And then a year after, actually that fall, 6 months after that speech, the weight and the pressure of feeling like I had to keep being the best, because they said, you're the best. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have these expectations we feel like we have to live up to from other people. And we create all this internal pressure inside of ourselves that they may not actually have the level of expectation of us that we have of us, but we've internalized it so much to be necessary for us to continue to be viewed a certain way that we keep upholding this mantle. And by that fall, less than 6 months after this keynote, I had a dream that I was drowning. And that was the beginning of the unraveling of being diagnosed with Epstein-Barr virus, which is an acute form of mono at 32, completely burning out less than a year after giving that speech.
Yeah. Is that caused from stress, from anxiety? Is it?
Yeah, it's the coalescence of so many things. And what I realized later, a year after I burned out, I got mono, I was diagnosed with that. I started speaking about it while I was recovering. I'd never shared publicly when I struggled before. And I started speaking about it, and people were really receptive and really responsive and coming up to me in tears after keynotes. And I was like, whoa, I'm onto something here. And there was a coach that reached out to me. He was one of the first coaches I connected with on LinkedIn in 2009 in my industry, the wellness industry. This is now 2017. She needs guinea pigs for a coaching program for a methodology called Immunity to Change. It's a book written by Bill Keegan and Lisa Leahy out of Harvard University. And the premise of the process is just like you have a physiological immune system that gets activated when there's a threat. You have a psychological immune system that gets activated in the face of a perceived threat. And so after working with her for months, what we got to at the base of it was what they call the big assumption. Why I wasn't doing the thing I wanted to do, which was put my voice out there, share my message, ultimately start my own business. And the root that we got to was the belief that I had was, if I am not impressive and I am not the best, then who would love and accept me? And I'll just be a nobody. And who would love a nobody? So at all times, I must prove to people that I am somebody. That's what burned me out.
Yeah. Oh, so powerful. I relate so much, and I'm sure so many listeners are going to appreciate you saying that out loud. Because we are oftentimes, and especially those high achievers, striving for all the things, and it's okay to not. And I mean, in a way, it's good that you got this burnout, right? It was a bit of a wake-up call for you. And so from there, were you still working, or had you already transitioned to your own business?
No, I was still working, and I was so terrified to ask for what I needed at work, because we have a perception, especially when we're a high achiever, high performer, we internalize the belief that no one can see me sweat and struggle. Mm-hmm. They have to only see the put together version of me, because if they don't, I don't think they're going to trust me anymore. They're going to keep giving me opportunities. I don't know what's going to happen. So I got to protect this. I got to shut that down. And I started asking for help in ways that I never had asked for help. And I started advocating for myself. I started unmuting myself there and advocating in a way that I never had before, because I was too scared. And what happened next was that stirred, as I started sharing my story and getting the feedback and feeling more emboldened in that way. I am back at that same conference that I had spoken at 2 years earlier. And I meet a guy who's a speaker full time. His name's Clay Abair. Somebody introduces me to him because I said, we know you want to speak, right? And by the way, for anybody that wants to go into another kind of area of work or life, one of the accelerators for that is to connect with and meet someone who's already doing the thing that you want to do, and they're several steps ahead of you. So I get introduced to Clay. I said, if there's a book you could read about speaking, you could suggest someone read who wants to be a speaker, what would it be? In the book, he said, Steal the Show by Michael Port. He and his wife have a speaking company in New Jersey. I order the book before I leave the bar. I go home, I talk to their team. I hear the price of the speaking training. I basically laugh myself off the phone. Because just no. And I go to one of their events in Philadelphia. They had a live event in Philadelphia for 3 days. And they had an altar call basically at the end. And every part of me felt convicted that I needed to sign up for this program. And I called my husband. I said, do you trust me? And I basically emptied out our savings account and I paid for this program. And that program was the catalyst that ultimately gave me the courage to leave my job in the fall of 2019.
Oh, what is the program called?
Heroic Public Speaking.
Okay. Yes, I've actually heard of it. Yeah, people are suggesting I go to that too. And I think I can only go when I can afford that. So, because it feels like the right thing. So many people have said good things about that. Okay. Yeah. So 2019.
Here we are. We're living the dream. We started a business.
Yeah. So you leave, but you're living the dream. You started just before COVID. What, you know? So tell me more about that.
Well, I leave my job with no business plan, and I'm married to an elementary middle school teacher, phys ed teacher. So I also had no backup plan. Like, I got to figure this out. And I had some residuals from my previous job of stuff that had been booked with clients. They didn't want to cancel because, you know, it looked bad. I had booked some things privately. But by the time December of 2019 hit, I had 2 gigs booked for all of 2020 and no plan for how to get any more. And I'm sitting in a living room in Dallas with a group of mentors, crying, looking at these 2 events listed on a flip chart. And my mentor named Rex Miller said, I want you to go home, make a list of everybody that you know. That could, anyone that you've ever worked with, that you have a relationship with, rate them A, B, and C in a spreadsheet in terms of their ability to potentially make connections for you, hire you, refer you. Because by that point, I'd been speaking as part of my job. I was doing lunch and learns and sometimes leadership trainings. I had several years of speaking under my belt at that point through my job. And I did that. I went home and I made a list of like anybody that I could. And I just started reaching out to the people locally and connecting over coffee and lunch. And I said yes to any amount of money to do pretty much anything relating to speaking. $1,200, good. $10,000, fantastic. I needed momentum. And the way that I got the momentum was by saying yes to almost every opportunity that came across my desk. So by March of 2019, I have more than half of my corporate salary equivalent booked in business for the year. I'm like, I'm doing it. This is amazing. But it's March of 2020. And so within 2 weeks, when the pandemic hits and the world implodes, so does 85% of my business, which just vanishes because live events are not happening. And that is my only source of income is live events. I get really scrappy. My background is in well-being, employee engagement, and resilience. I started speaking about resilience in the wake of burnout. What are the 3 things that every company needed during the pandemic? Employee engagement, well-being, and resilience.
Yes, exactly.
I start throwing my own parties again. I'm hosting webinars. Anybody can come to them. They're free. I just need people to know that I talk about this and that I can do it virtually. And opportunities start spinning out of that. Can you come speak at this for us? Can you? And again, I did stuff for free, just for exposure. I did stuff for exponentially less than I would do now, just to get momentum. I think sometimes we can let pride get in the way of starting small. And giving ourselves a chance to build enough, like that flywheel effect, like you have to have enough going to be able to give yourself the energy to go to the next level. So I'm getting really great response to all of this. I upskill myself in virtual facilitation with a community called Exchange. And then 6 weeks after the pandemic hits, starting to feel things are maybe coming back. My husband is teaching phys ed remotely on Zoom from our basement to 7-year-olds. And one overcast Sunday afternoon, we are out for a run, going up a hill, approaching an intersection, and he runs a few steps ahead of me across the street. And I did not see it coming when the Chevy Silverado that was stopped in the right turn lane took a turn at the light directly into me when I'm in the center of the truck. And I travel with him. Doesn't realize there's a person in his car. I come off the ground a few feet. I'm like, hold, my body's turned, hands on the hood. Traveling with him, he slams on the brakes in the middle of the intersection when he realizes there's a person on his truck. And I slide off. I hit the ground really hard. Can't breathe. My husband runs over, sees the whole thing happen from across the intersection, frozen in place. Somebody calls an ambulance. Next thing I know, I'm being rushed to the hospital where I'm told I have a spinal fracture.
I've read the story of yours. It's never easy.
No, not at all.
What happens next? So you're in the hospital.
Well, due to restrictions and rules at the time, visitor rules, my husband couldn't even drop off my purse to me.
Yeah, that's what I was imagining. Yeah.
He couldn't come see me either. He sent me off in the ambulance and just ran faster than he's ever had in his life, I'm sure, back to our house, and then drove to my parents' house.
Yeah.
And I go through all kinds of testing, and then the radiologist with no bedside manner whatsoever and a mask, everyone's masked. So you're not connecting to anyone either. Comes alongside, stands on the right side of my bed, and he just very stoically, with no emotion whatsoever, says, "So there's a fracture." And I start crying because I know it's in my back. And I'm active. I'm 35 years old. I'm alone. I'm getting this news alone from somebody who has no empathy. And he said, "You want me to call your husband?" I said, "Please do that." And then left me alone in the room. I don't know that I've ever felt so alone in my life as I did in that moment. To be processing the terror, I mean, there's no other word for it, of having something like that happen to you, and then to be alone. And so the next thing that happened was a gift. A neurology physician's assistant walks in the room. She says, "Why are you crying?" In my head, I'm like, "Look at my chart." It's fairly obvious. Not having my best day ever. So she goes on and she says, "Oh, you have the best kind of fracture." I said, "Tell me more. I didn't know there could be a best kind." She says, "It was a compression fracture. So it's like a tin can got like crunched a bit, as opposed to a compound fracture." She goes, "Let me tell you a story. When I was in my early 20s, I got really sick. No one could figure out why. I was vomiting, losing weight, did all kinds of tests. Finally, they realized it was because I had lesions on my brain. I had to have the lesions surgically removed. I had to relearn how to walk. I'm in the hospital for months. I leave the hospital. I'm walking to a cookout at a family member's house, and I get hit by a motorcyclist in a hit and run. And I end up back at the same hospital. And I think to myself, maybe I'm supposed to work in neurology." So she goes on to study, becomes a neurosurgery physician assistant. And she tells me her story, and she says, "You're going to be okay." And sometimes we just need one person. When you're in a dark place, sometimes you just need one person who's been there. What made her story credible was the fact that she's been there. And sometimes we're afraid to share our struggles because we think we're going to burden somebody, or we're going to be too much, or that they're not going to want to hear that. But she gave me what I needed that day that no one else gave me, which was hope. And there's even Gallup's done research on what we need most from leaders in uncertainty and crisis. And the 4 things that we need most are stability, trust, compassion, and hope. And she gave me compassion and hope.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, what an angel.
Yes.
Thank goodness that person came into your room and told you that. That is just what you needed in that moment.
Yeah, I'll never forget her. Ashley Simpson, I'll never forget her name. Yeah. I don't remember any other healthcare professional that I interacted with that day, but I will never forget her name.
I remember her. Oh, those people are so special. You know, in the moment, she was probably just doing her job, but having the biggest impact on your life. Yeah, that's amazing. All right, I'm just looking at the time because I just want to dig into so many things here. So that was 2020. And I know your healing journey has been, that was tough. That took a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you feel that you were back to yourself, or have you never gone back to yourself? Did it change something fundamentally in you, that experience?
That's a great question. It did fundamentally change something in me. I made a decision shortly after this accident happened. I don't know that it was conscious at the time, but now I can look back and say with consciousness that I decided, even though I didn't choose it, I'm going to find a way to use it. Mm-hmm. And making meaning of our suffering is one of the greatest gifts that we can give to ourselves and to the world. Yeah. And I started sharing with people, and I integrated it into when I, get on stage to do a keynote. Ever felt like you got hit by a truck? Everyone has said that. And what it did was it fundamentally, I was under a dark cloud for the better part of 5 years. I was in a lawsuit for 3 years. It was a lot. It was heavy, running a business, showing up on stage, having to be a source of positivity and energy for other people when I'm running on fumes. Yeah. And I learned so much about my own strength and resourcefulness in the midst of that experience. And I connected with a somatic therapist who really helped to support my healing from a mind-body integration standpoint. And more recently, I hired a personal trainer named Allison 3 years after the accident, 3.5 years after, and now consistently working out with her after 2.5 years. I'm the strongest, 41, strongest physically I've ever been. And that alone, when you feel strong in your body, when you learn to trust yourself again, I lost what I lost. One of the biggest things I lost in that accident was the ability to trust myself. Because I followed all the rules. The light was red. The truck was stopped. The signal was solid white. I did what I was supposed to do, and I still got hurt. And so I had to learn how to trust myself again and trust my body again. And when you learn to trust your body and you learn to trust yourself, you become unstoppable. And the past year in particular has really taught me that through a combination of coaches that I've worked with, a coach named Vika on my keynote stuff to really help me get, unpack some stuff, shed some layers of heaviness. My trainer, several friends of mine who have really been catalysts for helping me to learn to trust myself again. And it's been a game changer. And so now here I am 6.5 years, my gosh, into doing this. The accident was also a catalyst for me to start, following my childhood dream of making music. And I started releasing music in 2023. And now I feel like I'm really embodying my message of living an unmuted life, of coming alive, of doing the brave things in a way that I never had before, in quite the grounded, confident way that I feel I'm doing now. And it's been really hard.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful to be where I am right now.
Oh, that's so wonderful. If someone is listening thinking, oh, I love this story and I wish I could tell my story, but it's not that powerful. I don't have a story that's so powerful to share, and I don't sing and I don't, all the things. Yeah. What would you say to that person with a dream? And it doesn't need to be speaking, any dream, that they just don't feel like they're special enough. What would you say to that person?
I would say a few things to them. One, I would say for anyone who needs like the head stuff, touch there and they'll go deeper. I read a book in the wake of the accident called The Power of Regret by Dan Pink. And they've researched over 26,000 people from over 100 countries to identify the biggest regrets people have in their lives. And one of the most painful and common regrets we have are what they call boldness regrets. If only. Why didn't I? I should have. If only. And oddly enough, back to the previous story, so one of the biggest regrets people have is that they didn't study abroad in college.
Yeah.
I was like, check. He said he could open up a travel agency for all the people who wish they studied abroad in college. So one is to recognize that regrets of inaction are far more common than regrets of action. We regret the things we didn't do more than the things that we did do. So one is to recognize the truth and reality of that. The biggest regret of people on their deathbed, Bronnie Ware's book, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. So one, to recognize you don't want to live a life of regret. Second thing I would say is this. When you think about all the things that had to go right for you to exist, that when you think back generations, the people that had to connect in such a way and conceive in such a way at such a time in such a place with each other, that the sperm and egg that connected did so in such a way that now hundreds, if not thousands of years later, all of that worked exactly as it did is the only way that you exist. The only way. So to think that you are not somebody, to think that you are not an absolute miracle, is to deny science. You are the only person who ever has had or ever will have the exact combination of strengths and skills and talents and perspectives and wisdom that you have. Literally, no one else ever has or ever will have that combination. And so if you do not bring into the world the contribution that is only yours to make, you will rob the world of something that it can never have again. Do not rob the world of your contribution, because no one has it. And the last thing I would say is that you are somebody, you matter, and you're enough. And that people want your perspective, they don't want your perfection. They want your perspective, not your perfection.
Yeah.
Let them see you. Be willing to have the courage to let yourself be seen and heard for whatever it is that you have to offer. And do it from a place of service and contribution. That's the secret. Do it from a place of service and contribution, with the full awareness that only you can give us that.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So good. I hope everyone listening is just taking notes or will listen again. I feel like I'm going to go listen to this recording myself again. Oh, Rachel, thank you. Thank you for being so open and sharing so freely. We're going to wrap up now with the last question. And I ask this question to every guest because I feel like we give our young selves a bit of a hard time, that if only I did this when I was younger. But I feel like we did great. We did good. So if you could go back to young you, and you pick an age, doesn't matter, what would you thank yourself for doing then that is who you are now, has led to who you are now?
I would talk to 10-year-old Rachel, who felt excluded a lot, not included, like she didn't belong, like she didn't fit in. What I would thank her for is how, despite the fact that she felt that way, she continued to honor herself and didn't bow to peer pressure and didn't compromise her values or morals or principles or who she was for the sake of what somebody else wanted. And that was hard, and it was isolating. And I'm deeply proud of her for having the courage to do that.
Yeah. That is huge. Thank you. Okay, let's tell everyone listening. Don't say they can get hold of you on LinkedIn. I want to know who should contact you and why should they contact you.
Yeah, so anybody, if you are involved in planning events and attending events for organizations, associations, I'm talking leadership summits, annual meetings, women's conferences, emerging leader events, if you are all involved in that, or these events come to your organization, or you know someone who does this, meeting planners, heads of learning and development, heads of HR, which I know these people listen to your show. Contact me. My website is myname.com. It's racheldruckenmiller.com. And I would love to bring this experience of joyful aliveness and possibility and hope to whoever the people are that are in your purview. That's what I'd say.
Oh, Rachel, any last words that you want to leave with people before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I would say, be willing to bet on yourself. Be willing to bet on yourself, even if you don't feel fully qualified, even if on paper it doesn't logically make sense. Even if someone else calls you delusional when you know deep down you're just really determined. Keep betting on and believing in yourself and taking chances to put yourself out there to pursue the life and the career that you want. Because you got one shot here. You got one shot and you can make it really amazing if you're willing to do that. That's what I would say.
Yes. So good. That is such good advice. I hope everyone takes that advice. I say it too. I say, if not now, when? Just do the thing. Make the choice. Do the hard thing. You should be waking up every Monday so excited to get to do what you do. Everyone should feel that joy. So thank you so much for sharing.
You are so welcome. I'll leave it. My friend Ryan says, why not you? Like, why not you?
Yes.
Take a chance, take a shot, go for it.
Yeah. Oh, so I love it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.